So I think we can get started.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us. This is our inaugural webinar with our new guest series. And today we're going to be talking about targeting ergonomic improvements, utilizing financial data and AI. Just quickly introduce myself. My name is Jenny Zhao. I am with TuMeke in the customer success group. And today we have a really esteemed guest here. We have Patrick Marcotte here from Cincinnati Insurance, and I will have him take it away to introduce himself and get the conversation started.
Thanks, Jenny. I really appreciate the opportunity that TuMeke's provided for us to do this conversation today and talk a little bit about, focus on finding accidents and injuries and preventing those. And just a little bit of my background. Been in this business for about 34 years, currently with Cincinnati, as you mentioned. I've got a degree in industrial technology and occupational safety. So I've been doing the safety thing for about 34 years, and I picked up a master's of business on the way. And then I've also worked with several insurance carriers, agencies, and then also spent a stint in manufacturing. So I've kind of been there, done that, seen a lot of stuff, as well as worked coast to coast doing the consulting role. And when we talked about doing this, one of the things I look at is I'm a generalist. And that's kind of where we're going to take this story, this conversation from. What's the perspective of a generalist, and what is it that we do? So, a lot of times as a generalist, we start with focusing kind of on the, I guess that you might say, the monetary side is where we are. So we talked about, how was this going to come together? And one of the things that we find that's very important in the insurance industry is ergonomics, and strains and sprains are one of the key loss sources that we have. And we can, easily, it's multi-millions of dollars that are incurred with losses and accidents and things like that are sustained in the insurance industry every year. And it's not only the cost in dollars and cents, but it's also the pain and suffering that the individuals have to go through. Absolutely. And so one of the things that we do is we try to find different ways as a journalist to identify exposures and controls and things like that. And that's kind of where we chatted a couple of days ago about putting this together, what kind of direction we were going to go with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you wanted to talk a little bit about financial data. You indicate that there's a separation or difference between operations and insurance. So could you clarify what that means?
Yeah, when you're looking at data in general, we get copious amounts of data from just looking at the operations nowadays, especially we're capturing all kinds of data and different aspects and stuff like that. So we have what we call operational data, and that's the actual what's going on in the production process, what's going on with your throughput, what's costing us on the front end, what is costing us on the back end. And what's important as a safety person is not to separate yourself apart in the organization, but to become an integral part of the operations. And that's that operational data that we're going to talk about a little bit. Getting together with your leadership in the production processes. And this goes all the way from production, starting with purchasing, all the way to sales. And we'll tie a little bit of the sales information in also. But it's important as a safety person to understand your processes and procedures. And then we're going to talk a little bit later about how do we tie the insurance aspect or that other financial data in with your operational data to put those together. So it's important for you to understand your operations, understand how the throughput process works, because what you're looking for from an insurance, from a safety standpoint, is where's the most cost being sustained in the operation, and is that labor intensive costs? What is causing those costs? And many times we'll find with safety and production, they go hand in hand. And so if we take a look at where the financial costs are developing within the operation, now how do we find that information? You've got to go to the finance department. You got to talk with your operations leaders. You've got to talk with your accountants. What is it we're doing and how do we get that information? An example of this is, many companies that I work with over the years have had what they call a deburring operation. And what we discover when they have a deburring operation, it's very labor intensive. Many times it requires a lot of expendable materials and things like that. It's very costly. And we take a look at that. When you look at it from the standpoint of health and safety, it's also a very dangerous operation. It's very physically labor fatiguing. It requires an extensive amount of time. And it's also what many people used to refer to as rework. And we don't really want to do rework. So if we're looking at it from a safety standpoint, tying it into production, that gets us into, I know what the production is. I see that I've got this deburring operation. That's a costly area. Talking with finance, they're going to explain that to us, how much we're losing in that area, rework, or a product that has to be, we're putting too much into the product or something like that. So it gives you that idea of where is the most expensive component of our process. And as a safety person, that's a good place to start us looking, because if it's costly, many times there's labor involved with that, which in turn leads to accidents and injuries for individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned earlier purchasing and even sales and how that plays into the valuation of operations is something that we don't always naturally think about when we're in safety, right?
Yeah, when I was in manufacturing, it was interesting to see on the purchasing side, when I took a look at what things we were purchasing it could be personal protective equipment. Let's just keep it simple and look at that. If you're going through a lot of personal protective equipment, why? Why are you going through all that equipment? Why is it that this equipment's being used and damaged that it has to be replaced? All the way to the standpoint of, why do we have these systems that have to get replaced? Why is the machinery damaged? What's causing these events to happen? Because most machinery should last for many years. It should operate pretty autonomously with good maintenance. It should last for a long time. So when you start taking a look at those individual things and what purchasing is acquiring to keep the operation running, it's going to help you pinpoint where your problems are, where your blockages are in your throughput. And then on the other side of the scale, going from one end to the other, you're looking at sales. Our sales personnel are out there trying to make sales on the organization, trying to sell our product, making sure that we got a good margin on our sales of the product. And if we're incurring a lot of losses or we're incurring excess costs within the process or operation, that's telling us sales has to do either more sales or we have to charge more for our product. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to charge more for your product because we're in a competitive market. It's capitalism. It's a competitive market. So what I try to tell people is look at it from the beginning, purchasing all the way through, talking with your finance department, talking with operations, talking with accounting, and then get feedback from your sales personnel. What do they see in the field? How much can they charge for the product? What can they charge for the product? Do we need to control our costs more inside? And that's going to help us identify those key aspects of safety and operations that we need to do to make sure that we're focusing our energy in the right spots. So the sales is kind of that confirmation side. If we do it right, sales can keep up with a good competitive price. And if we have a lot of losses, or if we're incurring some of that stuff, and we'll talk about that financial loss data when we talk about the insurance side of things.
Right. I was going to say too, this is something that often gets overlooked, right? Can't emphasize it enough. And I always say it's so important to not just exist in the silo of being in operations or in safety, but to say like, you don't exist as an island. You have, there are decisions that happen in sales, or decisions that have to be on that in insurance. We'll talk about that in a second too, that tie into it. And what your throughput is can also affect those sales. And it's it should be more of a conversation, more of a direct link between the two.
You're correct. You're right on target.
Yeah, really great to be stated. Really curious about insurance data. Since you offer this unique perspective at CinFin, what kind of insurance data is available to you?
Well, insurance companies are notorious for collecting all kinds of information. If you've ever bought auto insurance, you know that they've got all your statistics, how many accidents you've had, all that stuff throughout your history. So your insurance carrier is going to have a tremendous amount of data that's going to help you analyze your exposures, help you analyze your process. So as you're looking at the operations and the process as it develops, and you start to key in on, okay, where is there a lot of costs being incurred? Is it a production issue? Is it a safety issue, and something like that? Then I encourage you to reach out to your insurance carrier and start getting some of that information that they have available. A couple key points of data that you want to have is you want to find out what your incurred costs have been. How much has the insurance company been paying for the losses that you've actually sustained within the operation? And that could be even equipment losses. It could be personnel losses or anything like that, to get somebody, help them get back to full recovery. We're going to track all that information, and you can take a look at that and see how is that affecting the overall operations. The others are, you want to take a look at your loss ratio. based on your premium, how much are we, incurring losses related to our premium? And then there's another one that's called your experience modification factor. And we're going to talk a little about leading lagging indicators and how those fit in there. But those are the key things that you want to look at as a client for an insurance company. Take a look at the accidents that you've had, work with your loss control consultants, your agents, and many times bring in your claims people and analyze what's happened with these accidents and see what you can do to address these specific losses and find out what the dollar amounts are, because those dollar amounts are going to tell you what is the financial impact. And if you start to having a significant impact on your losses, your insurance costs are going to go up. Now, on the positive side of that a lot of people don't realize is if you control your costs and you control your exposures, you can maintain the lower insurance costs compared to your competitors.
Right.
Now, that's a whole other meeting. Okay, so we're not going to go into that, but that's related to your experience modification factor. And I encourage people, talk to your insurance agent about your experience modification factor, and they'll be able to understand and learn how they can control, by controlling their losses, really how you can control what your costs are in many cases.
I always emphasize to my customers, like, make sure you're using your insurance data, right? It's just a pile of really great quality information that you may not necessarily collect on your side. So definitely utilize that if you have it. And you mentioned something about leading and lagging indicators, and that's really very interesting to me that your insurance carrier can provide all this information. What would you say? I know sometimes people would say this is more on the lagging side, but what's your perspective on that?
It's great you say that, because we always do have that statement of leading and lagging indicators. And what people are always looking for is, well, what's going to tell me what's going to happen? So when we look at our loss data, the actual loss events that have happened, the costs associated with those, we know those events have happened. If we don't do anything, if we don't make any changes to the process, we're pretty much guaranteed those events are going to continue to happen. So I have a saying that basically is, what have you done today that prevents what happened yesterday from occurring tomorrow? So it's important to realize that by looking at your loss data, the actual loss data, you're going to see into the future what's going to continue to happen. And those are the things we're trying to prevent. So your loss data, many times people like to say it's a lagging indicator, but I think I've proven in many cases it's forward looking. It's going to tell me what events are going to happen and how much we're going to probably incur, of course, associated with those. Now, the other component that I talked about was that mod factor. And that is kind of a lagging indicator, but it does give you the opportunity to compare yourself to other groups within your industry. And it allows you the opportunity to kind of say, okay, here's where I fit. If I control my exposures, I'll pay less than the person down the street for my insurance. If I don't control my exposures, there's a good chance I'll pay more for my insurance than somebody competing with me down the street. So the lagging leading argument has always been there. And I think that people need to understand, if you don't do something about what is occurring, it will continue to occur. And we can prove that statistically, it will continue to occur until you make a change. So that's really your loss data is that leading indicator for you.
Yeah, it's not one or the other, right? They're directly tied to each other. Knowing your losses will help you predict the future as well, or help you try to predict the future as well, and have some more of that data. But we've been talking, so we have been talking about identifying loss exposures in an operation, but after you identify these methods to prevent accidents from occurring, what do you do?
Well, a lot of times we take a look at what the risk is and try to determine what tools. As a generalist, once again, I'm not an expert, and we're grateful to have you, Jenny, as an expert, as an ergonomist, that we can bounce ideas off of you periodically when we're finding something that's very complex. But as a specialist, we're going to take a look at what things that we can do, what can we implement, and where do we need to go to get these resources and tools to key in on the loss sources. And it's our job to find what the loss sources are, and then find the experts, find the technology, and find things that actually will help us make improvements in the process and the operation, and thereby making improvements in safety. And that kind of leads us to, where we're looking at that technology, which
you're kind of gathering your toolbox, and I'm sure over the years of your time here in safety, you've seen a lot of different technology come in and out even as well, right?
Oh, yes. We've seen, I'm so old, I remember when there was an argument between Excel and Lotus, right? Which one we're going to use. And that's as simple as it was back then. So the technology has advanced so significantly. And my counterpart, Sean Ulrich, and I looked at a wide variety of resources because we identified ergonomics in the industry as a whole and insurance as a whole as a key component of loss for us, injuries, and also impacts on operations for companies. So we started with wearable technology that was out here a few years ago. We started looking at that. And there's a couple limitations to wearable technology. One, just the statement of wearable, because wearable technology, I have to apply to a person's body somehow. Now, it's difficult in some cases to go stick something to somebody because they're going to question, why are we sticking something to you? I think we all would ask that question.
Low invasive.
Exactly. You know, how much do you want to touch me? So we also, you know, we can use garments and things like that, but then getting the system to work and pick up the data points and stuff like that. And then also you have to purchase equipment and maintain that equipment, keep it calibrated, get it to the location you want to work with it. You know, how are you going to utilize it at that location? So those are pretty significant detriments to actual quote unquote wearable technology. Now, giving wearable technology its due, they are incorporating AI technology. And they're able to present better dashboards than they used to when they first started. And we're able to see things a little bit in real time. However, there is that stumbling block that we didn't jump at the wearable technology because of that. And we continue to use our old techniques of ergonomic assessment with protractors and compasses and looking at video multiple times.
Right.
Because that technology limitation.
Right. So you're seeing now, and I know, you know, just full disclosure, you use TuMeke as well. That seems like it could be like a bridge between what the drawbacks that you see and the obstacles you see in wearables. And now it's kind of like this technology is almost caught up, the sort of computer vision and AI as well.
And and you're right on target because I think TuMeke saw there's some limitations out there, and I had the great fortune of meeting with your leadership when they started their designing and when they started the process, and I was very excited about the technology. And we've kind of monitored, as I mentioned, Sean and I, we keep an eye on what's going on in the technological industry. And TuMeke really addressed with the video capture technology and being able to apply the AI technology to that. Really address, I don't have to touch anybody. We don't have to apply anything to anybody, which makes that part of the process significantly better. It is also answers that question of getting equipment from place to place, because TuMeke has created an app, and this app functions very seamless, presented a dashboard with that app, and it really answered a lot of the questions that we had, which led us to our, development, like you mentioned, developing our relationship with TuMeke. And we've been very grateful because we have already started taking a look at ways to use it. We're incorporating it in our ergonomic studies. I have one personally that TuMeke immediately, when I use the app and I take a look at the color coding on the app, and immediately we see, okay, the person's in a seated position, they need to be in a standing position. And the other thing that's interesting about TuMeke that takes us to the next level is once we get them into that position, we can go back and reevaluate.
Yeah.
And it's a simplistic process. We go back, we put the person in the new position, we reevaluate what other changes can we make incrementally with the color coding system and the numbering system that you have for scoring. It helps us work with clients so they understand much better too how we're going to incrementally work this down so that we get into, the details of what the problem was, start implementing the solution. And I know Sean's had a couple successes where we just changed the operation just a small amount, and already start seeing a lot of reward for that. So So
a lot of people probably don't. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, a lot of people don't always want to see that, see a huge price tag associated with these changes. And sometimes using simple tools or just behavioral changes or training, you can see a lot of improvement. And what's nice is you're not just using technology to get a baseline of what's going on, but you can also validate these changes, whether they're big or small, and to corroborate what you think might actually work. So that's always great to see that you can use it both ways, right? You can use it before and after.
And that's really interesting you bring that up because you're obviously an expert in this field. You've been doing this for a few years, ergonomic analysis. So you recognize that sometimes you can overdo the change. And I've been doing this long enough, I have seen those operations where somebody comes in and we make such a significant change
Mm,
and say, okay, we can't change back. We got to go with this because this is what we say. You know, we've done these measurements and that's where we're locked in.
mm,
And we have to be incremental. And one of the nice things that TuMeke does, it allows us to continuously repeat, and utilizing an app versus equipment, it's much more efficient for us to kind of continuously compete or take a look at that. And, you know, we're even taking a look at utilizing it for return to work issues, things like that, to help clients bring people back to work. And we see where, you know, when our clients see us using the app, they're like, it's that easy. And so those questions are starting to come up, you know, can we gain access to that? And I think that's a great partnership with us and with our clients. I think that'll be a great
yeah,
partnership in the future. And
definitely.
that, you know, it's the AI technology. It's what you folks have brought to the table.
Yeah, definitely curious, like just for a minute or two, pick your brain about your thoughts beyond TuMeke, just AI in general in the world of safety and operations, and of course finance, financial data, insurance.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, we're seeing companies go and like I said, we were able to capture all kinds of data, but the AI technology is allowing us to groom that data more efficiently. I think many of us have worked with
Mm.
Excel spreadsheets and we know they can be cumbersome because we're trying to make comparisons all the time. And that's where the AI technology really works well. In your case of TuMeke, it runs those calculations multiple times a second. Where used to, we had to run the calculation on a calculator or a computer program. We're inputting data and changing, where the AI technology really helps with that. The other thing I'm seeing with AI technology out there is monitoring workstations, monitoring the facilities, and basically helping people develop the ability to develop coaching techniques and
Hmm.
work right into the coaching techniques because they can
Point.
pick up on a problem and then they can develop a solution and have a coaching right away. So one of the things that the final statement on the AI technology is, you know, what I see in the future is we see equipment that's actually, when you're working around a forklift, the forklift will stop if you're in proximity to the forklift. And I think we'll see marriage of radio frequency technology with AI technology so that we get a full view of the operation and we'll be able to see that kind of stuff. So that's where I see the technology going. I think we're going to see it really incorporated into a lot of our environments, manufacturing and distribution and everything, and construction even.
Amazing, amazing. I know we have a few questions coming up, but just any last remarks? Just sort of summarizing everything. This
Yeah,
is
well, as I mentioned, you know, as a safety professional general, it's important to get involved with the process, the operations, getting the financial data. Don't be afraid to go to your financial department. Don't be afraid to talk to accountants, salespeople. They're all human, just like we are. Get with your insurance company, get that loss data, determine what tools you're going to utilize to impact those things and find tools and test them. Test the tools to make sure that they work for what you're trying to do. So, you know, I just want to say I appreciate the opportunity for TuMeke to give us this chance to chat and hopefully convey a message that will help people do their jobs.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for bringing this unique perspective. You brought up a lot of things that aren't always thought about. And I'm sure that there's a lot to kind of mull over and to think about, and hopefully some new to-dos on people's lists on who to contact next, and what kind of more data, how to mine more data to help
Mhm.
better inform our safety practices. So thank you so much for that. And
Mhm.
we do have a few questions in the Q&A. Feel
Yeah.
free also, everyone watching, to keep adding it. But we'll get started. I'll start from the top. With Nicholas Barr, are you familiar with OSHA Safety Pays tool, and how accurate do you find their estimates to be for a default profit margin for CTD cases?
That's a great starting point. Yes, I am familiar with it. That's been around for a few years. It is a great starting point. That's, you know, in great point because that's a good time to bring your salespeople in because your salespeople are very good at knowing profit margins and what you need for a return on investment. So that's where I bring the front end and the tail end, the purchasing, finance, and then sales, because they're going to bring that all together for you. And individually as an organization, you can really fine tune that tool to really fit what your ROI needs to be.
Yeah, jumping in here too, because for those of you who are TuMeke customers, we have an ROI tool that you're probably familiar with too, Patrick. And we use that. When I train people on it, I say, this is a good starting off tool. If you don't have your data, but please, if you can, go to your insurance. They have even more accurate. It's going to even more accurate data, and it's going to be even more powerful that you have that specific data specific to your company. But yeah, you'll have like kind of rudimentary profit margins, but it's a great way to maybe present to your sales team, to your CFO even, and start that. So yeah, thank you for that. Jeff Hoyle says, with the insurance clients you serve, do you run into privacy issues with videos and risk info being uploaded to the cloud?
That's a great question. It's becoming more and more of an issue. We've worked closely with our legal department. What we do ask is any time that we are capturing video, we ask for a release from those individuals. We explain to them one of the nice features of TuMeke is they blur out faces, and that technology works wonderful. You can also blur out the entire process if you want. But yes, we are finding that to be more of an issue. So in response to it, what we're doing is anytime we capture video of an individual, we ask for their permission first, get a signature indicating they provided their permission, and the same thing for the organization we're doing the work for. So, and then we retain that information in the file so that if in the future, and once again, please understand, I know a lot of people say, well, your insurance, so you're going to use that for marketing. None of our stuff that we're doing when it comes to health and safety for an individual client or employee ever gets published in any fashion without any permission. It always has to be given strict permission. And we really follow very closely to those standards.
Definitely. Thank you for that. And just a reminder too, we also can integrate consent forms into the TuMeke upload process as well. So feel free to utilize that or talk to your customer success manager to implement that. But that's a great way to cover your bases legally, for sure, and to get that conversation as well.
And make sure that you have, make sure that it's clear. And in some cases, you may have to translate it in multiple different languages. So that you have good clarification.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Joe Fisco asks, have you encountered any pushback regarding the AI monitoring? And do you let employees know that they're being recorded or have them sign off? So yeah, okay. We basically just covered that as well.
And then when we talk about the advanced AI, the next level, that's more what we're looking at as clients within their own facility. So I think there has to be that conversation when you're bringing employees in that you explain that they're being monitored within the operation for their health and safety. So that's the next bridge that I think we're going to cross.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know there's more tools that are going to do it on a more proactive case instead of asking for it and having someone come out. So it's a great point there. Someone asks, thank you for your talk. Can you give some examples of using financial data or sales data to identify what aspects of ergonomic issues?
Yeah, so I've got case in point. We've got one that we went and looked at that Sean evaluated. And we were taking a look at our loss data was indicating that really if we just changed from bending over to do this process to literally not bending over so far, we would reduce the number of incidents and thereby reduce that financial cost. The other is we find that in many cases, when we make these minor changes, we have an increase in production because it reduces the fatigue on the individual and in essence, fatigue on the system. So we tell people looking at the financial data, what you'll start to see is as things run more smoothly within the process, you'll start to see individual components of the process be reduced. So if we need more breaks, if we need more equipment, if you need PPEs, if you need different types of tables and workstations, you'll start to find as you start to implement those things, your cost of process will go down.
Great point there. So thank you for that. Two more questions. I know we're running a little over, so thank you all for being able to stay. Those who have to hop off will be recording this, so we'll send the recording as well. Lots of good questions here. A lot of people are really engaged. So yeah. Regarding AI and computer vision testing, have you or the insurance company done any type of validation testing of the technology to ensure accuracy?
So what we're doing at this point, and I think TuMeke is doing more of this than we are. TuMeke is validating their feedback, but we're taking a look at it. And once again, we see the loss data. So how we validate is we take a look, did we impact that loss, those frequency of losses and the amount of losses incurred, the dollars that we incurred. So yes, we will be doing what we call trending analysis over the next few years as we incorporate TuMeke to see the impact. And that's a great question if you're interested in this technology, to work with your carrier to monitor your specific data, because you can see specifically within your data what's actually occurring, and that'll give you a good trend analysis to it.
Yeah, I think that's great, a great point too, because then there are a lot of people, we get asked a lot of questions about accuracy and validity. And there's a kind of almost like a micro version and a macro version where the micro people are like, are the joints correct and all that? And we have some universities, we partner with universities to do that. But then how does that data translate, right? It's one thing to be accurate about your joints, but then does that actually translate into usable data on your loss side, your finances, your operation controls, all of that. So I think you bring up a great point, because it's not just about that small bit, but also like, does this work with the trends that you're also seeing from the other aspects? So
yeah, because you're looking for that validation. Any tool that we implement, we're looking for validation the tool's being effective. And a lot of that's in the process. Like I say, what we try to teach people is every process is integrally involved with safety, and safety should be integrally involved with the process. So by monitoring the costs associated with how we're making the product and the costs associated with losses or anything that's incurred as a result of any incidents, we can start to correlate and see if we're impacting that overall system.
Yeah. Always collecting all this data is so helpful, and being able to chart it across time. Yes. And then one last maybe statement from Matt Jeffs. Hi, Matt Jeffs. Another pro tip and good spot to mine boots on the ground data, or to mine boots on the ground data on the operations floor, is first aid boxes, especially if you have foil packed NSAIDs, Tylenol, etc. If someone keeps taking pain relievers, there's probably an issue in that department or on a specific shift. Really interesting. Didn't think about that, but good point.
When I was in manufacturing, what we did is we created a log of incidents. And these were just strictly, as you're indicating, if somebody got a Band-Aid, if somebody got an aspirin or something like that, they would just write down a log what it was they got. And that helped us, one, maintain the first aid cabinet to ensure we got the product in there. But then I would do on a monthly basis an evaluation of where we were having things happening. And then I would go out and meet with those individuals just to see, what was causing some of your concerns. If I was walking through the shop that day, I may pull the file, I may pull the log, take a look at it, and go talk to that individual to make sure they're okay. And that's I guess I'll leave on that final point. One of the things as a safety person is we're targeting improvements to the process, and I've talked about financial data, but at the end of the day, as a safety professional, one of the most important things that we do is we make it a better work environment for our employees, make it safer. And there's nothing better on those days when you can go and talk to someone and make their day a little better. And that's really, as a safety professional, what we're trying to do, is we're trying to make the process and the day a little better. And sometimes we don't get the credit for that. And sometimes we're looked upon as, oh gosh, here comes the safety guy. But really, at the end of the day, we're just trying to make the workplace a little better for you.
Oh, and I'm sure a lot of people here would agree that that's a lot of our true north, right? In terms of why we're in safety. So that's a really great point to end on. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining this webinar. And thank you, Patrick, so much
Thank you for the opportunity,
contributing your insight and knowledge, and and offering a lot of really great perspective as well.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great day. I hope wherever you're at, it's great weather, because I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.